assume that's good.
It's getting the YouTube going. It takes a second too. It's on now.
It's good to go now. Okay. So we will kick off. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think he knows the normal preamble, so we'll go straight to Karakia. Feel free to join me. Kia ora, kia whakapapa whanāman, ana, hei hura, i ngā tātou,
Aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou, tātou katoa.
Thank
Me
you.
e tai ki e.
Are there any apologies?
Councillor Elam's is an apology and Councillor Woodcock is a late arrival apology.
Okay. Do I have a mover to accept those apologies? I do. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Old, second. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Do we have any conflicts of interest on the agenda, Councillor?
Yeah, I have a declare conflict of interest for public excluded business 16.1.
Okay, thank you very much.
Happy to sit in, but I won't be offering you.
Yeah.
Or voting.
Are there any acknowledgements and tributes, please? And we have no public participation. So is there any urgent business that we know of? There isn't. So now we'll come to the confirming the minutes. So we're looking at the council meeting minutes from the 4th of September. Are there any corrections? Okay, none. Do I have a mover to confirm that they are true and correct? I do. Thank you. The Deputy Mayor, a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Olds. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
I was abstaining from that. I wasn't here.
And we have one abstention. Any matters from those minutes that people wish to discuss? Okay, so at this stage we have updates from the Murray Standing Committee and Community Boards, but there are no reports. So we will move on and we come to main business of the day, which is the annual report. And so we're going to.
So I'm missing something. There is a Murray Standing Committee report. I thought there was a Murray Standing Committee.
There is.
I've been reading it.
My notes tell me there is.
Sorry, it was moved in the wrong sheet.
Sorry,
The item was moved in the wrong sheet.
I'm just reading your notes here.
Oh, right. Okay.
There's a Murray Standing Committee report and a Strategy Working Committee on Representation Review report.
So what are we going to debate?
So there's items usually in the agenda for report backs and requests from community boards. That's different to a recommendation. So there's no reports for that. That's just what the mayor's telling you. And then we're going to the.
Yeah, and then there's actual recommendations which come later in the agenda. So this stuff they're currently there, and that will come there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Too fancy.
You broke.
The mayor's, so there's report backs, and that's the way we just give a verbal update, so that's not.
Okay, I'm just looking at the public agenda.
Yeah, so we don't get that, but we do have
Some recommendations.
But
Yeah.
as you,
So it's just the report back.
yeah, as you were.
Right, so we will now move to item 11.1, the adoption of the annual report. And at this point, I'll ask Janice to take us through recent developments.
Thank you, Chair. We've just had Karen Young from Audit New Zealand join us. We also have Bruce online as the chair of the Assurance Fiscal Finance Committee. At this point, I'd like to hand over to Karen so that she can update us on where we are.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this meeting. So where we're at with the audit is we've not yet completed our audit due to some unforeseen circumstances which affected our resourcing on the audit. So sincere apologies for the inconvenience, but I'm unable to provide an audit opinion on the annual report for today's meeting, which I know affects your ability to adopt your annual report.
And Karen, could you explain more about why we're not being able to adopt? Just so the members understand. I know you and I have had a conversation. Need you to explain it to the table, please.
Yes, yes. So before we start, the day we before, I mean, this is probably too much detail, but I'll put it out there anyway. Before we started the audit, the audit supervisor, who's a senior member of the team, had a family emergency and he had to return overseas. He's not yet returned to Audit New Zealand. We put in place a solution which was not without risk, but did involve two very senior team members starting on the audit 2 weeks after our planned start date. But we had very much hope due to their considerable audit experience that they'd be able to make up time. Unfortunately, one of them was sick for the entire week, which meant that we just lost time that we couldn't recover. And that wasn't without considerable effort. We had a national resourcing team, which we actively worked with. I also reported the matter to our Chief Executive, Steve Walker, our General Manager, Professional Practices, Chong Lim, and the Office of the Auditor General. So we did work very hard to come up with a solution, but the people we wanted on the audit, i.e. senior auditors, were already tied up with other audits, mainly councils actually, and Crown entities who also have a statutory deadline of 31st of October. But during the audit, we did receive very good cooperation from the council. We received a good level of information as well and was working very constructively with the council in all respects.
Bruce, do you have comments to make?
Yes, look, I just wanted to thank you first for that, Karen. What I'm hearing is Audit New Zealand has had to make calls and it's prioritised other audits, and somewhere down the track, I'd love to actually see that in writing, to be honest. What I want to reflect to the committee, Jan and Martin, is that Karen and I, Charlie and Jan, had a difficult discussion, probably about, was it last week? I can't honestly recall. Wanting to reflect on the position, and the lack of an audit opinion has placed us in a very difficult position. Karen's well aware of that, and I am aware that she's desperately disappointed, and I think she's reflected that. But through no fault of South Wairarapis, it does place us in a difficult position. I mean, on the positive side, I want to reflect that as your chair, in a reasonably short space of time, I've seen Jan and Charlie work wonders in improving our financial reporting. And I would reflect a couple of weeks ago, I was with you when we had the workshop with Charlie on the analysis of the financial information. That was sound and showed that actually management had gripped up on it. And it's ironic when perhaps our performance has been in question in the past, that actually a year in which we've done well, we can't get an audit opinion on time. So that's a difficult position for us. And the problem is that it makes us non-compliant with the Local Government Act and meeting our accountability obligations to the community. It does open us up to criticism. So I've asked on behalf of the council, and this was at the meeting we had last week, Karen to do at least two things. One is that she acknowledges today, and she is, and I would love to see the acknowledgement from your Chief Executive, Karen. I think when you had a plan B and the organisation says they cannot deal with South Wairarapa, I think it's important the organisation acknowledges that, not just you. And I wonder if Steve could send Martin an email to that effect. I think secondly, I have asked that her opinion, when we receive it, includes what has happened in prior years, acknowledgement by Audit New Zealand that the delay in the opinion is not of our cause, but their resourcing. And the third thing now, I've said two, but it's the third thing now that I have asked is that she inform the Auditor General, because the Auditor General reports annually on the performance of the sector and traditionally reports on those councils by naming them that do not meet the statutory deadline. And I would like the Auditor General to acknowledge the fact that this again was caused by his office not being able to prioritise the audit, not our performance. We have and will be by the end of tomorrow non-compliant with the Act. There is a question, what does that mean? Well, it's reputational, as I've said, it's reporting to Parliament, as I've said, and I've asked Karen to make good her genuine disappointment that we are protected as much as possible as far as that is concerned. In terms of our financial position and performance, fortunately, I think in our circumstances, a delayed opinion does not affect our position. For instance, it doesn't affect our position with the Local Government Finance Agency, which it could in certain circumstances, but it doesn't, I doubt here. And it doesn't mean that we stop in some way. But of course, I go back to the point, the fact that we are ultimately placed in a non-compliant position, essentially through no fault of our own, is a difficult position to be in. So look, that's, Jan, the key points I wanted to make, which is that actually Karen makes good on her genuine disappointment, and I can only attest that I've heard it, and I take it as genuine. I just would like the Office of the Auditor General and Audit New Zealand to make good on that disappointment and the choices that they have had to make to deprioritise our audit. Thanks, Jan. I'm happy to take questions.
Now, thank you, Bruce. Well, I'll open up the meeting in a minute. Two questions. Karen, are you also able to answer questions?
You're on mute, Karen.
You're mute.
Yes,
Right,
yes,
thank
Martin, of course.
you. Yeah, but before I do that, can I ask you, Karen, just to respond to Bruce's comments, please?
So I guess I agree. We of course are very disappointed. We didn't actually not prioritise South Wairarapa. We had a very strong team to start with, and apart from the supervisor, the remaining auditors on the team did start on the date that we agreed. It, it's just that we were unable to replace the supervisor with an equally qualified person on day one. The best that we can do, so again, we were not deprioritising South Rapa. We managed to, and it wasn't without difficulty, we literally robbed two other clients to be able to resource two very senior auditors 2 weeks later. And like I said, we had hoped that would make up for the lost time due to their family emergency 2 weeks before. But due to the complexity of the sections that they were working on, we couldn't kind of wrap it up in the time frame, especially with one of them being sick for a whole week.
I was thinking more that Bruce asked that you would put some of this in writing, for example, that you would inform the Auditor General also. I was hoping you might respond to those requests.
Oh yes, sorry. Yes, so with the breach of statutory deadline, the council is required to self-disclose in its annual report, and we will suggest some wording which will be along the lines of due to the resourcing issues we have had. So I know councils, including yourself, have put that in annual reports previously due to COVID-19 when we had resourcing issues. The second one about including something in the audit opinion, which we also did in 2019, I will take that up internally. And as for the Auditor General, he has already been advised by our Chief Executive of the reasons for the delay in providing an audit opinion on your annual report. He was advised immediately after I had the meeting with Jan, Carly and Bruce last week, and he was advised again yesterday. And also our Chief Executive had offered to join this meeting if I needed him to. I said to him, in fact, I had a meeting with him just before this meeting. I said to him, I didn't feel that was necessary, but I will pass it on to him that you'd like something in writing to yourself, Martin.
Thank you.
And, you know, I will let the Auditor General know also that this meeting took place and what was discussed.
Thank you. I can see that some councillors do have questions to ask. We'll start with the Deputy Mayor.
Good morning, Karen. It
Good
sounds
morning.
like you were aware very early on that there were significant risks to the completion of our audit, and you took steps internally to address that. I'm wondering why you didn't advise Janice that there was a risk far earlier than last week.
Oh, so Councillor, I did advise Janice and Carly there was some risk with the approach that we were taking. So I kept them up to date with what was happening. And also because our team is on the ground, it's obvious that we didn't have another person there. But it only became clear, Councillor, last week when the staff member who, you know, was sick one day, then 2 days, wasn't able to return to work. In fact, he was so unwell that he got to South Wairarapa. We were meeting with the valuers and he had to come off the call, and that was that. He had to return, had to be picked up and returned to Wellington. So this is kind of what we're talking about. So we're not talking about slightly itchy sore throat. It was more than that. And I think, you know, at the time we thought, well, okay, he's off for one day. There's still hope. Also, it became increasingly obvious that the revaluation for the three waters in particular was quite complex this year. So we had already took steps to cover that off by engaging a auditors expert who were working with us. But because South Wairarapa is served by Wellington Water, we were working through some of the relativities in the valuation, and we also had kept Carly and Janice up to date with that. So in short, councillor, it just kind of came, you know, it just happened quite relatively over a short period of time. So, you know, we notified the council when it became clear at first opportunity. I certainly didn't want to leave it to this week, because as you say, we tried to find someone else.
Thank you. Councillor Plum.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. I'm listening to you make every excuse under the sun. This is not the first time that we have heard this run of excuses from Audit New Zealand. We pay a significant amount of money to Audit New Zealand on a contractual basis that you are there to deliver an outcome. I presume you're going to be returning some of the money that we pay you, given that you haven't met our expectations or the contractual arrangements for the second time 2 years, I think, isn't
it? Well, we'll definitely.
It's not a laughing matter, actually.
No, what I'm saying is that we'll definitely be completing the audit as quickly as we can. I'll be having a conversation with the Chief Executive and CFO about a forward timetable. Look, I'm unable to comment on previous years, but my understanding is that, you know, there's been a delivery issue by the council as well.
I think it's a bit rich to actually blame the council. I would have thought that sitting where you're sitting, blaming the council is not particularly a great place to be, given that I've heard these excuses more than once now.
I'm not really blaming the council. As I have said, the council have delivered an annual report this year, and we've worked very well with council. I think it's been acknowledged by the audit committee chair too, that the council has lifted its game in terms of its process and financial reporting. Because this is my first year on the audit, I genuinely am unable to comment what happened in previous years. But my experience this year is that we've had good information and good cooperation by the council. I do want to emphasise that you know, us and not able to complete the audit is in no way a reflection of what the council's performance has been to date.
Okay, well, with that in mind, could you ask your Chief Executive to get in touch with Bruce and Janice about refunding us some of the money that we've paid on a contractual basis that you've failed to meet? And quite frankly, I'm not really concerned about all your excuses, because that's an internal problem.
I will have a conversation with the Chief Executive.
Yeah. Councillor Bolt.
Yeah, thank you. You know, some of the phrases that you've used, Karen, like this was an inconvenience. It strikes me that's probably lack of understanding on your part as to how serious this is. And I'm disappointed actually the Chief Executive didn't front up to this meeting to own this himself, rather than has left you to hold the can, because we have got serious questions to ask of him and the performance. This is, as our Councillor Plymouth said, the second year in a row that this has happened to us. The excuses are thin. quite frankly, I don't care about the excuses. You had no plan B, and this leads to a loss of accountability and trust with you guys. And we have to use you. And I don't think that's acceptable in any form. There's no question, it's a statement. There's nothing to answer there. I am furious about this because you're not the one that has to answer to the ratepayers. We are.
Our chief executive did offer to
Well,
attend
he
this
shouldn't be
meeting.
here. He shouldn't have offered. He should have actually stepped up to the mark and front and centre and owned this himself. You had no plan B. To blame this on someone who got a little bit sick, I don't care. You knew what the obligation that we had was of today. This late weekend, you guys should have been working on over the weekend. I don't give a shit. It should have been done. Sorry, I'm angry.
Martin, sorry, can I just be rude and interrupt? I need to leave for the next for another meeting. So I think I've given you a strong indication where I'm at. And look, I appreciate the feelings, and I think it's very real, and you should express those. I will work with Karen and Janice and Charlie and Audit New Zealand over at least them making the right moves. And I hear your point about fees. At least in terms of what is externally set. We still have the issue to talk to our ratepayers, and I agree with the points that are being made, but I'll need to leave you at this point.
Well, thanks very much
Very
for the contribution, Bruce. Yes, thank you, Karen. Now, just ask whether there are any further questions from councillors. And I don't think there are. So what we will do at this point is to move on to a procedural motion. And it is that the item of business being discussed does lie on the table and not be discussed at this meeting. And I will move that. Do I have a seconder, please? I do, the Deputy Mayor. All in favour, please say aye. Aye.
Definitely aye.
That was it.
Martin, could we talk about where to from here? We don't need Karen here.
Oh, no, thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Good to see you there. Yes, so let's hand over to Janice for her thought. So we have just voted not to discuss the matter.
Well, I mean, next steps are obviously we'll continue to work with Karen and the team to get the final position.
It's not so much that I'm worried about. This is the second year in a row that we've used this organisation that has failed us. We need to start now seriously looking at other options. How many times do we need to put our trust in an organisation that is clearly not fit for the task?
They're not prioritising the South Waitanapa Upper District Council.
After last year, they should have gone, we can't do those guys again, and stepped up. Complete failure on their part.
Unfortunately, who we use as auditor is not within our control.
My understanding is we have to be audited. We don't have to use Audit New Zealand.
You do. The Office of the Auditor General has an appointments director, and they appoint the auditors to council.
Well, then we need
So
to.
we will write to the director and make representations for us to be changed. Having been through this many times before, you don't always get what you want. But it is up to them to decide who our auditor is, and it is only one of a very select group that you will be assigned to if it's not Audit New Zealand.
Well, can we request that it's not Audit New Zealand?
We will absolutely write and ask and make that request.
Good. Yes, I've been led to believe that there have been some councils that have managed to change, so it does happen sometimes.
Because
I think it's worth
the
trying.
previous council for resourcing issues, they were swapped to a different audit team.
Yeah.
And that was potentially on the back of several years of requesting a change. So it happens. And I think we have evidence of delay in previous audits, so we're definitely putting it forward, but I can't guarantee that it would be changed.
And I assume we won't be paying their full bill.
I don't, have we a choice on that?
I don't think we can avoid not paying for
Well, that's a contract.
But
Then they're not
that's it.
how their contract.
It depends what the contract.
in the contract, I guess.
It's not a contract in the normal sense of it's a, you get an audit arrangements letter and an audit engagement letter, and you sign that to say, these are the fees that will be charged.
No
Yeah, but
accountability.
in that letter, there is, we will provide you by a certain date.
Absolutely.
So if you went to court, they have failed.
That conversation with Stephen and you.
I think the thing is, the strong feelings of this council need to be conveyed. I'm not quite sure how you do that. We have to use the right language, but, obviously we're all pretty angry about this.
I think I've made my position totally clear to the auditors.
Good.
I'm as unhappy as you.
I'm sure.
I think the
Probably
important,
more unhappy.
the important thing now is that we collectively keep representing the position, which is a failure on audit, to our community, so that they realise that there is no failure on the part of our staff or this council. It is 100% sits with audit. There's one place that reputational damage should lay, and it's not with us. It's
Given
not
my
with our-
diplomacy, I'm more than happy to join you on those conversations.
You didn't.
That's a good reason you shouldn't.
I mean, I think the person who's likely to be most disappointed in the fact is Janice, followed closely by Charlie. After all, this is their profession, and to a certain extent, people like Janice, like to retain their good name in the field that they are going to be expert in. So I think just picking up Melissa's point, it's absolutely important that we continue to remind everybody that this has happened, and it is absolutely no fault of anybody who works for us or anybody around this table. Yes, I have to say that I was sort of greatly shocked when I got the news sent out, partly because I think, look, we've all probably been in the position where we're not able to deliver something. But I thought this was leaving it very, very late in the piece to suddenly come out that that was the case. I think that's the thing that upsets me. But anyway, okay.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's really right that we want to make that message clearly to the ratepayers, but I think it would be far more effective if there is a very public apology by the auditors, because it's, we don't always have credibility with the ratepayers if we've been defensive, but if the public, and especially if it was in the papers, it would be really helpful for the reputation that it has
This being a public meeting, surely it would be well and truly entrenched in the public's mind.
that was the point of Karen attending and falling on her sword this morning.
So from today, we will leave this paper to lay on the table in its current form. And we will hopefully bring it back to the next council meeting once we've completed the audit and got the opinion.
Very good.
So I'm told that it's days, potentially a week or so. It's not months of waiting. But I will be keeping a very, very close eye on this going forward.
So what I propose now is that we move to item 10.1. Andrea has been waiting patiently. Can I invite you to the table, please, Andrea? Kia ora. And Nikki, thank you. And so this section of the agenda is recommendations from the standing committee. So go for it.
Thanks for making out to Kia koutou, ko tai mai, at last night's multi-standing committee meeting, the committee unanimously agreed on the preferred name as suggested by Papawai Marae for the Māori ward. The name is Te Karo o Te Ika a Maui. And as you all know, this name refers to the legendary story or pūrākau of when Maui fished up the North Island. And Te Karo o Te Ika is, of course, the eye of that fish. And it refers to the area of South Wairarapa, to which that Lake Wairarapa is the most significant natural landmark and symbolises the ward being the eyes and ears for tangata Māori within your rohe of South Wairarapa on the council, and how you continue to endeavour to work in partnership with tangata Māori of this area. So that's what we've come to, and Nikki's going to talk to the logistics.
Thanks, Andrea. Through you, Chair. So today we are asking Council to accept a late submission from the Māori Standing Committee for the representation review. It has been advised that is the best process for this recommendation. And then the following paper, which is the recommendation from the Strategy Working Committee, includes the amendment of the Māori ward name. So just this recommendation is to amend that Māori ward name at this stage, which will follow through into the next step of the representation review. The resolution number from last night's Māori Standing Committee meeting is MSC 2024-45, which we will also put on record if that is a decision that you make today.
Right, so before we go any further, do I have somebody to move that we accept the late submission from the Māori Standing Committee and that we amend the name as proposed? We do. Councillor Maynard, thank you, Kay, seconding it. So I'll open the room up for discussion.
Can I just ask what the legality around accepting a late submission is, in terms of process, whether we're allowed to after we've actually had all the hearings and everything?
Through you, Chair, absolutely. So I've got quite a lot of advice on this, and we've looked at a couple of options, including a recommendation from the Māori Standing Committee, and the recommendation was to tie it to a late submission so that it ties in with that initial proposal. Because you are looking to amend that initial proposal, a late submission just ties it neatly together as part of that step in the representation review process.
But I don't have a problem with it. I just, my issue is process, and it always is process, and go, you know, we're putting in a late submission. People that have submitted already haven't, you know, submissions are public and people have the right to actually comment on submissions. Yeah. People are not getting that right to comment. So that's my question, is this, how does this fit into the legality of doing this?
Yeah, through you, Chair. So yeah, a couple of things. So you will of course remember that we had the Māori Ward Amendment Act come through, which took place during the consultation process. So that was a bit of a kind of step that we needed to consider as well. We needed to make sure that that Māori ward went through as well before the consideration of the Māori ward name. Which normally wouldn't take place. That was an amendment act that came through. Secondly, absolutely everyone gets the right of an objection for this. So as part of the changes you are looking to make for the final proposal of the representation review, when there are amendments made to that, it allows anyone in our community to object. So the next paper coming to council, which is the strategy, recommendations from the Strategy Working Committee, will include an amendment to that initial proposal as part of the final proposal, and once that is accepted by council, we then go out for a period of 1 month, which is 1 November to 1 December, in which individuals have the right for objections and appeals. Yeah, and they go through to
the entire proposal.
Yeah, including the names of all of the wards. So for the
it's important that the public actually understand there is this process, because otherwise it can be seen as a very undemocratic way of doing things.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and we will look to make sure that that's some clear communication on that on the website as well.
Councillor.
I'm going to take a slightly different tact here there and extend a thank you very much for the work that the Māori Standing Committee has done around having a name for this ward. I know the process to get to having a Māori ward has been fraught the whole time. And I think, you know, to get to a point where we have a very beautiful name that is really closely tied to this place particularly is feels like a gift, and yeah, just wanted to extend thank you for that.
Yes, as I'd like to similarly said something similar. It just struck me such a beautiful name and so much nicer than the name we had before and so much more appropriate. So I appreciate all the work to bringing that to this stage. Thank you.
Anybody else asking to speak? Councillor Pip, do you wish to sum up, respond?
Oh, no, I'd also like to extend a thanks to Papua Marae and also to the Māori Standing Committee for bringing this forward. I think being able to move forward without just calling it the Māori ward is actually to have a name for it which belongs to this district is really, really important, and I agree. It is a beautiful name. It's the name that we've always known for down here, and so I'm really appreciative of the fact that it was given the nod.
Okay, so we have two motions. Firstly, that we accept the late submission and that we amend the name of the Māori ward to Te Karu or Te Ika a Maui, which, as people have said, is a lovely, beautiful name. And all in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Is against? No. That's carried. Thank you very much. Yes, I was thinking as you were talking, Pip, that in this country we do have a way of naming things such as the Maori ward, the North Island, South Island. It's sort of very prosaic, but not very poetic. So I think we've done that. Well, thank you very much, Andrea, and thank you very much for bringing that recommendation up away to us. Which now brings us to recommendations from the Strategy Working Committee. I think, Rob, are you joining us at this point? Which of you wishes to kick us off?
This is the final steps for the representation review. Today we are at council asking for a resolution to adopt what is considered the final proposal for representation at the 2025 elections. It is a very set structure that is quite clearly defined in legislation. So you will see there are a few extra pieces to those recommendations. We need to just clearly state the changes that are being made from the initial proposal through to the final proposal and the reasons why those changes were made. What will happen is following the adoption of the final proposal, a public notice will go out, which is in the appendix. And then we will be open for appeals and objections, as mentioned earlier. Those will close on the 1st of December and they will go through to the Local Government Commission in December, and that gets left with Local Government Commission, who in the new year, around February, will look at the course of action that they will take, whether that be hearings, up to them.
Just a procedural question. So the notification goes out, final proposal. It's open for appeals and objections. Is that only appeals and objections? We're not taking great idea. Thanks very much at this point.
Correct. Yeah, correct. So the idea is that it's a bit of a stepped process, and that if you were to take the initial proposal and accept that as your final proposal, then the only option would be those that submitted could appeal. Because there is a change in that proposal from the first to the second, then it now is open for anyone.
The general public now have another opportunity.
Correct. So that and those will be viewed and responded to by the Local Government Commission.
So they don't come back here, they go with our proposal to Local Government.
Correct. So I will collect them, they will come through to the council, and then we put them through to the Government Commission. The appeals and objections do need to be related to what is in the final proposal. So we need to make sure that what we are getting through relates to the representation arrangements as per the legislation.
Okay.
Now, I hesitate to do this, but I'll give it a go anyway. And I don't intend to read out every single one of the 10 recommendations. I'm going to trust that they have all been read. I think even though they're quite lengthy, I don't think there's anything particularly complicated there for people to understand. But I will move all 10 recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. We'll just see if there's any discussion. But one thing that's I thought I should particularly raise is on page 22, 23 of the document I'm looking at, we've actually got a copy of the proposed public notice, which is obviously a thing that interested people will end up looking at, seeing and reading. Are there any comments about it? It's quite lengthy in its own way, but are people broadly happy that I think it gives a good overview of where we ended up. Thank you for that. Okay. Any discussion on any of the recommendations? So it does seem to have taken us quite a while to get to this point, and slightly distressed that this is not actually the final end point, but never mind, it's a step along the way. Okay, I shall move all the recommendations in the paper. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, that's 2 is carried. So I think
Martin, sorry, just before we move on to something else, can I just ask an adjacent question?
go for it.
Throughout the process to date, there has been much discussion around community boards, and 2 of our community boards gave very good submissions on their sort of what works well and what could work much better. At what point can we collectively come together and review the purpose and empowerment of community boards, and as a reflection of the information that has been gathered? Can that be a sort of adjacent step that comes out of this process?
Interesting question, given we're within the 12 months now of the next election. I mean, you can do that at any time, but it's just how would we give that effect between?
Even if it's not given effect between March and October, I think there is benefit to it, to the next triennium and the triennium after, that we reflect on and take into account the information that we've received, both from the community boards and from the community at large.
I think we can certainly do that through a workshop before we hit the next election.
Yes, yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, there's also the Rural Advisory, which is a paper, Rural and Coastal Advisory, apologies, which will come to council as well. Also a strategy working committee. Yeah, absolutely, we could put a paper together as well with some recommendations for the next triennium as well, especially.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, while I appreciate what Melissa has said with regards to community boards, I found the process quite different, and the Rural and Coastal Advisory Board was the main thing to come out of that. To me, I don't think there was anywhere near as much with regards to the community boards that came through as clearly to this council as what did with the Rural and Coastal Advisory Board. So I would really appreciate hearing that there will be a paper coming through with regards to that. And I think that it may be time to discuss, like with regards to the terms of reference. We heard about empowering community boards more, and that may be where we're needing to take those next steps. But I don't believe that the workload of that compared to what needs to happen with regards to a Rural and Coastal Advisory Board, because that's new, and that's probably where the focus needs to be. And as long as it doesn't affect this, So this continues to move forward, then that's fine, you know. But I do appreciate all of the work that you've put into this. And I think that where we're moving is the right direction. So thank you so much.
Right, so the next topic is the members' remuneration and allowances policy. Once again, Nikki and Rob, can I hand over?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. As you will no doubt be aware, the Local Government Members Determination 2024 provided an increase for the remuneration. All our elected members, including the community boards, the remuneration is set through the Remuneration Authority, and then that goes into legislation under the Local Government Members Determination. This is a paper just outlining that change, but also updating our policy so that it connects with the legislation. We originally had an appendix to it which outlined the remuneration, and for two reasons we have removed that and instead directed our community directly to the legislation and the Remuneration Authority itself. One, just so that they can get the most accurate information at all times, and secondly, so that we don't need to get back for approval if there is a change needed. So this just helps hopefully streamline that process.
It probably costs more than the actual figure in the Remuneration Authority. Total. Remuneration Authority at all.
I was anticipating a comment from Councillor Plymouth.
Yeah.
This does seem a little.
The Remuneration Authority got paid.
I mean, we have a remuneration authority which sets rules, and on top of that, we basically have a policy which says we respect the rules. I'm not quite sure what we're trying to achieve here by having a policy, but can somebody enlighten me?
There's a requirement. So through you, Chair.
I see. Apparently, Amy says there's a requirement to have.
There is a requirement. As you're aware, we have a number of financial policies. The policies are what guide us as a South Wairarapa District Council. This one simply aligns the legislation with what is happening with the operational side of council, so that people are aware of where to find the information and what our
through the chair, as you might be aware, the Remuneration Authority also sets rules such as the mayor's vehicle allowance. There are other sort of policies. What this policy does is it operationalises it for organisations, so it's aware of how it has to respond to it.
Right. Now, I think if I've understood you correctly, what you're saying on page 2 of your paper is that in fact the Remuneration Authority's most recent determination keeps everything identical except for the vehicle kilometre allowance. I just wish to do a little sort of check here. Does everybody collect the correct kilometre allowance, and do we have a system for making sure that everybody has been accurately remunerated, if that's the right word? Thank you, Charlie. Tell me.
Yes, typically, confirm that as part of the tax we make when we make the payments to councillors and elected members, is that we make sure we're using the correct allowance figure. There are some old forms that float around quite frequently with old amounts on them, but as part of our finance checks, we've always recalculated at the current figure.
Okay, well, let me be more specific. We've got a meeting here today. Everybody has probably travelled here. I'm not quite sure what the cycle allowance is, but I'll leave Councillor Plymouth to worry about that. But for those people who travel by car,
I don't claim when I ride a bike.
Do we check that everybody has claimed what they are entitled to?
Voluntary, isn't it?
Yeah, people put in for it.
I never claimed, so.
I've never claimed anything my whole term here. I don't think we all do. So,
Me either.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
In that case, can I observe that you are entitled to claim for travel? In my view, I think as you are entitled, you ought to do so. I don't think the intention of anybody is that you should bear the cost of wear and tear on your vehicles coming to council meetings. And the second thing is I notice in our remuneration policies, I've now just lost the clause, but somewhere in there it says people who attend hearings are entitled to additional payments for that. Can I check whether or not that is happening?
That happens, yes.
That does happen.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Okay. Any other comments, questions? Thank you, Councillor.
There's another question. The difference between what the deputy mayor receives or the mayor receives, where is that defined?
I believe that is in the legislative determination. I would need to double check. I looked at that thoroughly well, so I would need to double check that.
That's
We decide on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we decide on that.
It can go on the first.
Went into the pool.
Yeah.
The mayor's salary is set by the Remunerations Authority, but the any extra duties that a council has over and above being the chair of a committee or a deputy mayor is decided on by council.
That's my,
Yeah.
we did decide it.
Yeah, well, that's right. We did.
At the start, yeah, at the start of the training.
Any other questions? Okay. So who moved and seconded?
I'm in the wrong place. Okay. This one.
Do I have a mover for the two recommendations? Councillor Holmes, Councillor Maynard seconding. Any final comments, thoughts, observations? Who's in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? That's carried. So that I think that brings us, there are no more information reports, mayoral reports, members' reports, and appointments reports. So we now come to public excluded business, a little early as planned, but I suggest we take a break until 10:10, and then resume.
Excellent.
Thank you. So